Welcome back, everybody, to the Small Business Safari. We're going to help you get up that mountaintop of success. And today we're going to get into it with Tara Riley, who's the franchise president for Fresh Coat Painters. She's got over 35 years experience, all wide and varied, everything from McDonald's on down to sports clips, enhanced wood. Can't wait to get into all that. What we love is that she actually started in Minnesota, but actually went down to Texas A&M to go to school, and then ended up in our great state of Georgia to go to Kennesaw State. But the thing that drew my attention the most was in her free time, not only does she like to volunteer for the St. Vincent de Paul, go Catholics, I loves cooking, golfing, touring back roads on her motorcycle with her best friend and companion, Steve. Welcome, Tara Riley.
Cheers.
Cheers, Tara.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, we're excited to get into it, but before we do that, we just wondered, your favorite companion, Steve, does your husband know about this guy?
I thought it was your dog.
Oh yeah, shh. We try to keep certain things in the background. But,
Solid.
Yeah.
All right, now I guess we can jump into it now that we've loosened her up a little bit. So, Tara, thanks for joining us. So you grew up in Minnesota, but you said, I'm out of here going to Texas A&M, or had you moved down there already?
No, I graduated from high school. I grew up actually right on the North Dakota Minnesota border, so I can claim both. My dad was from there originally, which is how we ended up there. But my mom was from Texas, and so I actually spent all my summers in Texas, and I didn't know that Texas had any other season than hot as heck. Growing up, I mean, if you think about this, I spent my winters in North Dakota, Minnesota, where it's like 35 below. And I spent summers in Texas where, it was
kind of had
hot
that
as
backwards.
Hades.
Yeah, you're like the reverse snowbird.
Yeah, when I went down to go to school,
masochism.
It is. I mean, when I went down to go to school about October, I called my mom up and I'm like, "Hey, Mom, we got to talk. You forgot to tell me about this." It's like we should have. What were we doing growing up in the tundra? Oh my goodness.
That's awesome.
And now you've split the difference and you're in Cincinnati.
Yeah, after when I graduated from high school and moved to Texas, I promised myself I was not moving back to winter. And for over 30 years, the farthest north I lived was Kennesaw. And then this opportunity came up with Fresh Coat, and it required me to move to Cincinnati. And I thought, it wouldn't be that bad. And honestly, Cincinnati's winters are nothing compared to the Great White North. But
No.
but the other day I had a PTSD flashback because I went to bed. It was 44 degrees and raining. Woke up. It was 8 degrees below zero. We had 5 inches of snow on the ground, and there were 31 degree below zero wind chill. And I'm like, did I get transported back to North Dakota? Or
you start clicking your heels to go back home?
Yeah, take me away.
I was like, oh, take me away.
The polar vortex. That's awesome. So you went to Texas A&M knowing that one day you were going to be a painter.
That's right.
There you go. So you go to Texas A&M and boom. I guess you're not a painter, of course, but so you went to school to Texas A&M. What did you get your degree in, and then what did you do after that?
So my degree from A&M eventually, which I took a little more elongated course in getting my degree, I think, than a lot of people, but it was in management, but organizational development was my focus, which led me into really I love scaling. I love, what does it take to build the organization that scales? So where I kind of landed from there, I worked my way through school. So I started working for McDonald's when I was in high school. Now, clearly, if you'd asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, neither was a McDonald's professional nor a franchise professional rolling off my tongue at that time. Or painter even. I had probably a little more philanthropic aspirations. I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to be a veterinarian, and hence Texas A&M was a good choice. Actually growing up, if you'd asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, usually I would say something flippant like, I don't know anything but business. And that is a true fact. As a child, I didn't have any understanding. My parents were not entrepreneurs. My mom was a teacher. My dad worked at a bank. I didn't have a good understanding of what business was all about back then. So, the idea of going into business, either owning a business or supporting businesses, was definitely not on my radar back then.
But isn't that McDonald's experience really good? I mean, you learn so much about process and time management and customer service, and it's just shoved down your throat. I had the same thing in high school in Burger King.
Yeah.
And
Whoa, you guys are kindred spirits.
well, we're
One
actually
was the-
arch rivals.
Arch
Oh.
rivals.
That's right.
Okay.
My first night was on drinks and I just about had a meltdown. I couldn't keep up with the drinks. Friday night rush. Now they just push a freaking button.
Right?
Yeah.
You pushed it.
I actually had to
I could
put
just
the
see you
ice in
melting
it and
down
fill
on
it
that.
to a certain level, and that couldn't keep up. And the drive-through girl was yelling at me. I mean, it was a rough first day.
Listen, you're not going to die of thirst. I'll get this right to you. That's not what we do here at Burger King. That's not the Burger King way. I bet you that didn't happen at McDonald's, did it? Because there's so
Oh,
much
no.
butter. Right.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, no, I mean, I spent almost 20 years with McDonald's. You can imagine I have a lot of disaster stories, a lot of
Wow.
good stories too. But Alan, you're right. Even now, I look back on and realize how valuable all that experience was, especially, from management, learning to, having to hire people. I've probably hired well over 1,000 people in my lifetime, and had to, and working with people to get the best out of them, training, understanding how important training is in developing people. Nobody gets up in the morning going, I think I'm just going to suck today. Really, they don't. I mean,
But a lot of people also don't get up and go, I'm going to do a great job today when they
That's-
head to
Yeah.
their off.
Yeah, I
right?
can't-
Right,
yeah,
Chris? That hit you a little hard? Didn't it?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
one did.
Sorry.
I don't want to suck today. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to put that over my thing. Instead of be great today, I'm going to put just don't suck today. All right.
But
So you came out of Texas A&M. And you were working at McDonald's, and then you started working your way up in the chain. Is that what you did?
yeah, so when I left to go to school at A&M, I kept working for McDonald's, even though, like I said, that was just to make some money, to make sure I had, I could, fill the car with gas and buy beer on weekends, whatever, but I also was raised with a value that said, whatever you do, do your best.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just don't suck, but do your best. So, I just felt like if you're going to do something, do your best. So I always, I guess I always just tried to do my best. And, lo and behold, I kept getting promoted.
It's funny how well that works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You show up with a good attitude and do a good job, and good things tend to happen.
Well, she had the seed planted early with the parents. You could tell, but banker, school teacher, working in high school while she's still going to school, not just goofing off like a lot of folks. So obviously did that, and she's joking about going through Texas A&M a little longer than some people, but it sounds like you were working while you were doing it. So hey, what the heck? You're buying beer. I mean gas, not beer.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
Well, and it was so yeah, I kept working, and I kept changing majors because I realized, first of all, I was going to be an engineer, but I realized that higher level math was just not one of my superpowers. And gosh, you need that. I started getting into things like calculus and, crazy trigonometry, oh no, not my best superpower. And, anyway, what I finally realized was I didn't have a solid affirmative goal. Like when I went to school, it wasn't like I'm absolutely going to be this and I'm firmly committed to it, so I'm going to go through school. I had a cousin, she and I went to A&M at the same time. She finished in 3.5 years. She knew exactly what she wanted to do, what she wanted to be. I envied that. But the bottom line was I really just wanted to have options. Like, I think I'm one of those people that I don't like being locked into things. So I'm always looking for, okay, what's my option? But I kept working and I kept getting promoted. And so finally I said, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here at A&M, but I see a career path here, and I'm really enjoying this business thing. I started realizing that I enjoyed working with people. I enjoyed the pace of it. It was fun to, really try and, continue to. I love breaking records. Can we get more sales in today? Can we get more cars through the drive-through? That productivity piece. I found I enjoyed it. So I took a little break from school and went through McDonald's training programs, became a manager and an area supervisor. And I had a really great mentor at the time who I worked for. And I remember the day he promoted me to area supervisor. I was going to now have 5 stores. And he looked at me and he said, so why did you come here? I'm like, come where? And he was like, here to Texas. I said, well, to go to school. And he looked at me, he says, don't you think you should finish? And I'm like, oh my God, you just promoted me to run 5 stores and you want me to go back to school? He said, well, now you have the flexibility to do it and you should. And so I appreciate that, here was somebody who saw something in me, and he was also,
advice.
yeah, gave me great advice, gave me the opportunity to do that, and basically told me he was committed to helping me get that done. And so at that point, I was very clear that business made sense, and I went back and finished my business degree at A&M.
There's such a common thread in all the podcasts that we've done.
Yeah.
And, you know, entrepreneurs are very independent and they don't like being told what to do, but every last one of them had a mentor or somebody in their life who just gave them a little swat in a little bit of a direction. And I just love those stories.
Yeah, you know, it's because we're all hard-headed and we want to go a certain direction. But you're right. A common theme that I think a lot of people need to have is you got to be open to taking in criticism. You got to be open to taking advice, and finding somebody that really resonates with you. It's been big. How many times have we heard, I didn't think I was going to stay at McDonald's for 20 years, and lo and behold, you did.
Yeah.
How many times have we heard, I had no idea what this business is about, but the guy invited me to go on the journey and I did it. And here I am today.
Well, and I bet you that's a big thing for you in franchising, because you have a lot of people like Chris and me, former corporate folks, corporate refugees. They're not used to being told what to do, and now they have to follow a model. And and the thing that probably holds the ones back who aren't succeeding the most is the fact that they just can't take advice from other people who maybe know a little bit better about this particular situation.
I think that is, we see that all the time. You buy into a franchise to save yourself time, right? You're saying, here's the experience, here's the model, here are the systems and processes. And yet, you find yourself wanting to reinvent the wheel, right? That independent streak. I understand it, but it is the piece that is most challenging for people. You want to be an entrepreneur, but yet you want, hey, I want to get there on a faster path. And, but yet I sometimes still have to make those mistakes, and we try to guide people through that as much as we can. So
did you ever aspire to be a franchisee of McDonald's, or were you a franchisee of McDonald's?
I never was. I had one opportunity just as I was leaving McDonald's. I was actually switching over. I got recruited to go to Sport Clips, and an operator actually realized I was leaving. There was kind of a rule: you can't poach, from the corp or whatever. But asked me, actually asked if I wanted to come in as partner, but I had already made a commitment to somebody, and I that's probably another piece of values. When I make a commitment, I follow through on it. I did end up being a business owner, and actually, what was interesting is a friend of mine and we bought restaurants in Austin, Texas, where I lived for. After I left McDonald's, I went to move back to Texas, and we bought an independent restaurant, and we expanded that into actually 2 locations just before the great fall in 2008, which was interesting. But
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
But it was actually there. Those were, it was an independent restaurant. We thought about even franchising it, but I really learned to appreciate what the value of franchising was when I owned a non-franchised independent business. And
you have no clout.
Oh, I realized I had to do everything. We had to do everything ourselves. Things that would have been done by the franchise, and you realize how much time that takes. And when you really want, where's your time most valuably spent when you're an owner? It's really growing your business. It's, growing your team and getting more customers, and, putting a system in place to make sure that you can grow that business. But when you're bogged down in little details that are, it's just not high value time, and that's what I really appreciate. I realized, often I'd say, gee, if we were part of a franchise, I wouldn't be redesigning my own menu or finding somebody to redesign my own menu. That would be done, but I will say that as a entrepreneurial person, it was nice to have full control of things.
How long did you guys do that?
I had it for about 5 years.
And so what kind of food did you, what kind of concept?
What we called, it was an Italian restaurant, so Italian based. And then people would ask, what our influence was, you're Northern Italian or Southern. And I'd always say a little Eastern, And they look at me. I said, East Austin, because our number one selling item was a Chipotle chicken pizza, or Chipotle chicken pasta, which are, clearly are not traditional, but we had a lot of fun with it. So
I'm getting really hungry. I mean, we
I
started
know.
with McDonald's and
I
now
know.
we're in
What-
Italian and
I
pizza.
and she stayed in the restaurant business this whole time. Did you actually get back in the did you ever have to go back in the restaurant and start cooking or did you have to do the front of the house? I mean, did you ever have to drive all the way in?
there were times. Valentine's Day was our busiest day of the year. Our little restaurant in Austin was known as a first date. It was a mecca for first dates because it was romantic and a value. So everyone, I mean, we just got killed on Valentine's Day because everyone was going back to Romeo's, and it was on that day, you talk about trying to figure out capacities, then it's all hands on deck. So there were times where, yeah, every once in a while I'd jump back and run the expo or get out and talk to customers. I will say that probably one of the best things I did for my business was play in a 40 team softball beer league. I
Good
always tell,
networking.
yeah, absolutely. It's interesting as new owners come on board with Freshcoat, they'll often say something, make a joke like, well, I love to play golf. I guess I won't have time for that. I'm like, oh no, you should play in a league. It's great networking. Back then I
I should have
actually,
bought a franchise from her instead of the one I had.
Right. I know,
No.
because she encourages you
Play
to
more golf.
play more golf. You would have said, hey, I'm going to stay with these guys.
And
like
I'm
them.
assuming if you follow the processes and you use your time wisely, you have time for golf.
I like it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But actually I like the other part better too. It's because, well, we golf as well, but of course we are in a beer golfing league, but we're not really in a league. We just go drinking. So you were able to drum up a big network and get people excited about. So did you have to do a lot of advertising when you had the concept in Austin?
We did not do a ton. We did a lot of community service stuff. So we would, if we had the opportunity to donate food to a cause, it was funny. A lot of restaurant owners wouldn't do that. I think I always say they step over $50 to pick up 50 cents a lot. They're worried about cost, but I said, the best, I mean, food is love, right? And, if there was an opportunity for us to, provide some food for community service stuff or get out there and network, again, being in softball leagues and golf leagues and, going out in the community was one of the better things for us. We were blessed. The Austin Statesman paper wrote an article on us the first Thanksgiving, right? It was probably just about 10 months after we bought the restaurant. They did a kind of a nice expose on us as new owners of the restaurant because we had done some community service stuff. And right after that, so we basically earned media. And right after that, our sales jumped up about 30%.
That's solid.
And restaurants don't jump like that. And this was a restaurant that had already been open about 13 years. And we'd had it for about a year. And so,
I mean, jumped up 30 and stayed there
for 12 months. Yeah.
Wow. We talk a lot about networking on the podcast, and obviously we're big fans of it. You actually brought up two different avenues that I never really thought of, but as you brought that up, I started thinking back. You're right. I had picked up in my social network, I have picked up a number of different opportunities, whether it be that, but then you hit on the other part, and that is giving back to the community. When you talk to your franchisees today, talk about how you tell them to get involved in the community and network through that way.
Well, we highly recommend, we have a program we call Freshcoat Cares, which is our name for, saying, hey, you need to be good corporate citizens as well as, just doing great quality work for your customers. And we encourage new owners to start with a project, finding a project in their community where they maybe paint a room. It's like giving the gift of paint, right? It's a great way to get employees and painters involved. We find that everybody on the team loves something that's a give back. And what part of the way we encourage it is we actually support it. So if somebody's doing a Freshcoat Cares project, we'll chip in money against the labor for them. So we'll match basically what they're contributing back to the community, and Sherwin-Williams will donate the paint for the project. So they basically pay for half the labor and really usually none of the paint. So
Is that an idea you brought to Fresh Coat? Was that something they were doing that you brought from your restaurant experience?
It was something, it was interesting. When I got here, they had just started, it was getting some traction. So I can't say I brought it, but I did recognize the power of it, and I expanded it. And that was, I felt like it was something that we needed, not just to be random acts of kindness, but to be a corporate, you know, basically part of our value structure.
All right, so let's go back to 2008. So you got hit by something that it's really hard to recover from, and that took you out in the restaurant business. So then what? What'd you do? Oh, she froze on me. Well, she's back.
So yeah, I'm back. You froze on me for a second.
I thought she was really thinking hard about
I
your
know.
question.
It was
Chris
awesome.
was like,
I asked my
a
question,
good question.
and she paused, and I was like, "Oh, I've done it."
I think I got all of the question. You were asking what happened at 2008. It was, and then what? And it was interesting. I had an opportunity to when we sold the restaurant, which was had an opportunity to do that, and I went. I started was definitely wanting to. I love franchising, and I never really had left franchising. Even the whole time we owned the restaurant, I worked full time for other companies. So it required us to have, again, I had to have good staff, good scaling in the restaurant. I mean, so I wasn't physically always running it, but I found myself right then. I would like to say I was underemployed for a moment. And so I had exited from a position,
I'm going to write that
and
down.
we sold the restaurant. All of a sudden, for the first time since I was maybe 15 years old, I literally didn't have a job. I didn't have a business. I didn't have a job for a few months. That lasted maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And one of my former franchise owners, I had mentioned, I think you mentioned, I worked with a system called Enhanced Wood Renewal. I love the trades, by the way, which is why I'm here with Fresh Coat. But we did cabinet and floor refinishing. And my local owner, the local Austin owner, called me one day, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, he goes, my brother had been helping him on his crew, and he said, well, hey, you know, I don't know where your brother is. There's a long story to that, but I said, well, if you need some help, I'll come help you. Because I'm like, seriously, I wasn't doing anything. I actually, as soon as I was underemployed, I actually volunteered with the First Tee. You might be familiar with that organization, but I called, I said, Cecil, yeah, I'll come over and help you with your project. So we were refinishing some cabinets and sat down at lunch, and he said, well, I'd love, man, I'd love to have you help me in my business. And I said, oh yeah, sure. Why not? So we worked out a deal, and I helped him triple the size of his business in about 3 months. Finding staff. By the way, I found a lot of that staff through our between my golf league and the softball league.
So you say that so matter-of-factly, but you triple a business in 3 months.
Yeah, what do you do?
Doing what?
Yeah, right. I know that's the first thing I was like, dude, what?
Well, so this was interesting. So we had leads. So a lot of times I see this. Businesses have leads. We see this with our Fresh Coat businesses. Cecil had leads coming in. The only thing that was holding him back from tripling his business was capacity, right? So how fast can I, how many quotes can I do? How many crews do I have to get the work done and do it at a quality level, right? So we just had to get his organization, we had to build his organization into something that could handle 3 times the business and do it profitably, obviously, right? So, I started out by helping him do quotes. And then we trained salespeople to do quotes for him. Got him an administrative assistant to handle so that, you weren't dropping the ball on customers, making sure there was good, clear communication between, for the quotes, somebody answering the phone, following up to make sure that, hey, Mrs. Smith, Tara's on her way out there to do that quote, or, are you still good to go? And helping us improve the closing rate. There were several pieces of it, but it was mainly, it's about capacity, right? We got to have the ability to get the work done.
That is so lightning fast, because you went from refinishing a couple of cabinets and he's like, yeah, I'd like to have you help out my business, to tripling the business in 3 months. So somewhere within the first week, you had to have gone, hey, Cecil, you need an administrative assistant. Hey, Cecil, we need to change, how we're doing our,
Yeah.
you're making a ton of changes in a short amount of time, and he was good with it.
Yeah. You know, it was interesting because he wanted a scaled business. It was just kind of getting there, right? And sometimes you just need a leg up. You need a hand, right? You need somebody that when you're in the weeds, when you're the owner and you're on the ladder or you're sitting there refinishing cabinets, you don't have time. You won't make the time to go do the things you need to do. It seems overwhelming at the moment, you know.
And he was part
And,
of a franchise system, right?
right.
At the time,
Yep.
it was enhanced. And so the franchise was not giving him the support, or he just wasn't taking it, or
He wasn't taking it because I had before how I knew Cecil was I had been vice president of operations. So I was the support. This was a fascinating lesson for me, having I'd been on the franchisor side for a long time at this point, and it had been a while since I'd been on the franchisee side. And for about a year, I spent some time with Cecil. Then I actually went out to LA and helped another enhanced franchise owner grow his business. And what I realized is even me, knowing that we needed the support from the franchisor, we would forget to think about them. You're so focused on the customers and you're so focused on your business as a franchise owner. You often don't turn, you know, I think about it. You don't think about asking for the support because you're an entrepreneur, right?
right.
And what the lesson I walked away with, and I took into the rest of my franchising career, was how we have to be very proactive as the franchisor to make sure that we're helping to provide that support, not waiting for them to ask for help. Right. And so without being overbearing. So there's a fine line there, right? I don't want to be, I'm not trying to, it's tricky. I'm not here to shove something down your throat, but we have to be, the way I look at it is we have to have proactive support. We have to be very proactive with our level of support to make sure that we're always right, that we're on top of mind so they don't forget to use the support they're paying for, which is part of what you're doing when you are in part of a franchise. You know, and then trying to use tech. Now we're looking at how do we use technology to help them have more instant access to support, not just from us, but probably the most valuable piece of being a franchise in a franchise system is the other owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're walking the same walk you are, and you know, I think the thing that struck me when we owned the restaurants and when I worked with Cecil is how lonely it is to be an owner because there's no one else on your team that's the owner, right? You know, the owner is always really alone. And I think like when I go out to the PCA conference and spend time with, you know, a lot of painting contractors that are not, they're independent owners. I think the reason they're drawn to that is because it gives them an opportunity to sit down with other owners who, you know, and it's funny in the trades, I think people are very willing to share. I love going out and meeting with, you know, I love to sit down with people who've scaled, you know, good God, you know, 16, $20 million painting businesses. And, you know, I want to know, how did you get there? You know, what are your systems you're using now? And people are more than willing to share. And that's stuff that we take away and use to help build the systems that help our owners grow and scale.
Yeah.
But, you know, the beauty of a franchise system is that you have other owners that are, you know, and we do things to facilitate that, to their communication. And I think technology, that's our kind of our theme for this year, is really stepping up the game of how do we use technology to help them be able to talk to each other faster.
Yeah.
So
it's the old adage of you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself in franchising.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's solid that you're doing that. How many franchisees do you have in Fresh Coat right now?
We've got about 175 locations right now. So
yeah, and so has it been that size or has it been growing?
We've been growing steadily. I think when I took over, I'm in my 9th year now, but I took over, we probably had 75 or 80 active owners.
Nice.
It's such a competitive space. What drew you to Fresh Coat, and what is it that you're offering that's different from some of your franchised competition?
You know, I'll tell you, for what drew me to Fresh Coat in the first place, just I love franchising, and I love the scalability of the trades and painting. I love the trades business model. I also think that there's, in painting especially, the opportunity to, you know, from a competitive standpoint, you know, to professionalize this trade for the consumer is huge. You know, it's such a fragmented really presence out there. And, you know, I think consumers are just crying for people who do what they say they're going to do, communicate, you know, show up on time. Hey, we're going to, you know, and do it and bring, you know, do quality work and stand behind it. Right. You know, I mean, gee, it doesn't sound like it's that hard, but what's awesome is, you know, but you know,
Right.
oh, I wish it was that easy. If it was that easy, everyone would do it. Right.
Right. Exactly
So,
right.
Well, so I saw one thing on your website that I wanted to kind of point out, because Chris is always talking about in his business, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's just respecting the sanctity of the owner's home.
yeah.
And I saw that on your website, and I really don't see that in too many other business about us pages. And I thought maybe that would be something you might want to talk about.
Yeah. And well, when Freshcoat, you know, you think about it, there's not a tremendous number of franchisors in the painting space, and the majority of them were really, I think, focused a lot on exterior painting, and we felt like there was an opportunity to really hone in on that. You know, the interior painting. At that time, we were an employee model, so you know, hey, Mrs. Smith, we know who we're sending into your home, background checked, you know, trained painters. You know, making sure when you're dealing with the interior of a home, you know, it's a little different level. You know, it's taking that extra care, you know, putting on the booties, you know, making sure we understand that we're going to take care of your environment and that your kids and pets are safe around us, you know. It's you know, it's also about not invading people's home, getting things done quickly, right? You know, I, you know, we've all had great, I'm not so great contractor experiences where you feel like the contractor moved in with you, right? You know,
No,
no,
not my company. Are you kidding me?
yeah.
No, the
So,
trusted
you know,
toolbox.
so we realize that, you know, look, if you understand productivity and you understand production rates, you also then have some reasonable certainty to tell, you know, the homeowner, or Mrs. Smith, as we like to call her, hey, you know, this is a project and we're going to be in your home for 4 days. We're going to have, you know, we're going to have 3 guys in your home for 4 days. We're going to start on this time and we're going to do our best, level best, to be finished by this. And, you know, with an interior project, pretty much nothing gets in your way. Exterior can be interesting. You know, we can't control the rain, you can't control other things, but when you really deal with an interior project, you can give some certainty to the homeowner to say, okay, you know, this is when we're going to show up and this is when we're going to end. And that's the problem I see a lot of times out in the contracting world, is sometimes, you know, and one of the fears even I have of hiring somebody is like, when is this project going to end? You know, sometimes they don't.
Which brings me up to this is going to be my next business that I start. I'm going to start another contracting company. It'll be done in 3 days. So 3 days from now, done contracting. Because it'll always be 3 days from today.
Whether it's
Yeah.
done or
Never.
not, you're just
3
out of
days.
there in 3 days.
No, it's just no. I'm at 3 days from now, or like it's like you get a free hamburger tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow never happens.
Free beer tomorrow, right? You
Right.
know?
Yeah, I think you hit on something that I actually have talked about quite a bit, and I'm getting ready to go to a study that they did here in Atlanta that I get to be privy to because I'm because I
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And so, but they're talking about this, and I can't wait to see what this study brings about. But what I found out about 2 years ago is that as tradesmen, we get away with a lot. We can, you know, I've got a handyman remodeling company, and you know they'll put up with the guy with the ratty jeans and maybe, you know, the torn shirt because they're like, well, you know, but he knows how to do this carpentry. Or I'll give Tony a break because, you know, Tony looks like he knows what he's doing. Oh, Tony was running late because he had a flat tire. Poor thing.
Right.
Oh, Tony couldn't make it today because his battery went out. Well, you know, and we all know that that's BS the whole time, but it doesn't matter about that. What I'm finding though is that the customer experience is becoming more and more important, where we're not going to get as many passes as we used to get.
Yeah.
And that's why we have got to be on point. You've got to be more on time. We don't give 2-hour windows. You got to give half an hour windows. You can't say it's going to be 3 days when you know damn well it's going to be 6 days. And so you've got to be more about setting that expectation so you can exceed it. And I think that's going to be bigger and bigger for all of us in the home services space.
I agree completely. You know, I think that, you know, it goes back to even, you know, when I started with Freshcoat, it's not even been but 9 years ago, just having a website or having a web presence made you different, right? You know,
Ooh.
now, well, you know what? Now just about everybody out there any small company, they have a Google My Business, they have something. So there's, again, so every time that, I think it's just, the bar is being raised all the time. And I feel like we have to stay ahead of that curve and make sure that we're, our owners are, whether it's through technology or other components, that we're just a step ahead of, even the average competition now. You can sign up and get, you can get text alerts, you can get things to help you communicate with your customers that, you couldn't get 10 years ago. And, so we are constantly having to evolve, and I think that's going to be true in all of the home services and trades for sure.
Yeah, the ability to communicate, set expectations in the instant gratification society we're in now too, especially.
Yeah.
Because I tell my guys is here's the first secret of the customer. I put that in my book, by the way, Alan.
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about your book.
We haven't brought about that. Oh, let me bring that up. Thank you for bringing that up, Alan.
Yeah, how many books have you written, Tara? She's probably written 8.
No, yeah.
None.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. I thought it was 8. I'm like, no, I didn't see that in your bio.
It's really bad day for me, Tara, when the guest and Chris have both written a book and I haven't, because I tend to hear about it.
But what I talk about is they have no expectations. So when you show up to paint a house, they think you're going to come in, not make one speck of dust, and you're going to be in and out of there in 5 minutes.
Right.
No, Mrs. Jones, back to your person. This Mrs. Jones, poor Mrs. Jones. I wonder if her first name is Karen.
Well, there's Karen Jones, and then there's, Amanda Smith. We prefer, no, I'm kidding.
I love that. So you work on that, and you mentioned employee owned. In the franchise model, how much can you train? I've had another franchisee tell me, well, the franchisor is not allowed to train me. It's a rule that they can't. I'm like, really? You got
to be careful of the whole management
joint
issue.
Employer. I think is the term that's used. We can train our franchise owners all day long, and we can provide them the tools to train their employees, and we can do classes. We can conduct classes that they send their employees to all day long. So good news is we can do that. Where we can't control and manage their staff or their schedules. That's that's when it starts to bridge that joint employer challenge. And there are some franchise models out there where it's more of where the franchisor maybe is getting the leads and setting schedules, and that's a little bit more in the gray area, and we're not in that model right now. So
gotcha.
So we talk a lot about specialization on this podcast, and I noticed you kind of mentioned some of the painters focus on exteriors and you are doing interiors, but I also noticed you do commercial space, which is really a completely different vertical. Is that something that you've brought to increase market share, or is that a completely different animal that you have to train differently for?
Yes. And we started, and I'll go back. We started with a focus on interior, but we also realized very quickly that we do exteriors for with the same idea. Hey, we want that certainty, right? Here's Mrs. Jones. It's going to be this length of time. As we continued to grow, we realized there was a big need out there for really in the commercial space to have mobilized, I guess, better, painters across the country. General contractors, I think, find it a little challenging when they have a big project. Maybe they're doing 150, of some retail establishment across the country, right? And all of a sudden, they're having to find painters, in 70 markets, and that's not necessarily a lot of fun. What's really fun is when they can call one company and say, hey, I need painters in all these markets. Well, guess what? As we continue to grow and penetrate more markets, the fact is that we now had the ability to say, yeah, you know what, we can do that. We can cover, maybe we might be able to cover all those projects for you.
So it's more of a corporate account coming from the franchisor pushed out to the franchisees as opposed to the other way around.
That's one area. I mean, that's where our expansion has been. We had franchise owners who realized very quickly they built relationships in their local market and realized they liked doing the commercial side of the business. we saw the opportunity to really create, like we said, hey, we can leverage our size and it's a win-win. The contractors and property managers can have one point of contact, and then we can use our network of highly qualified people to help them get that project done. But it did take training. Not everybody was familiar with the commercial space. It's a different, obviously a little different cadence in terms of working. Sometimes you're working with other trades, sometimes it's different. We're talking about night work. Sometimes if you're talking about retail repaint, there's a lot of things that are different. So what was nice though is that when we really decided to expand this section of our business was right at the beginning of the pandemic, when we were sitting still for a minute. So we looked around and said, well, we don't know. This is a very uncertain moment. This would have been in, March, April of 20. And nobody was really sure what was going to happen. All I know is that if you're facing turbulence, the best thing you can do is put your foot on the accelerator pedal, and figure out how to move forward. Right.
That's the title of this podcast.
All right. When you're facing turbulence, I tried that today, and that's why I hydroplaned on the road. We had a huge rainstorm today.
It's a metaphor, Chris.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was trying to get around this joker, and I didn't hit him. I just moved him off the road, and I'm kidding.
Yeah.
All right. When you hit turbulence, hit the gas pedal.
Hit the
Yeah.
accelerator.
Done doing it.
So we sat down and said, hey, we got to, so we worked very quickly to put together some training programs that we could do virtually with our franchise owners to help them with the commercial space. We had some opportunity. We had just developed some relationships, actually, ironically, right as the pandemic hit. And it turned out commercial didn't slow down. Guess what? If my employees aren't in my office, it's a great time to do painting.
Exactly.
It's like everybody's at home working from home. Well, okay, well, we can clean. We actually even toyed with and brought in the idea of doing basically sanitizing.
Right.
And it didn't stick for the long run, but we did have some folks that at least during that period we would offer it. We worked with some of the cleaning companies and developed a process really quickly to understand. It was interesting, different space, but it was something to say, hey, Mrs. Smith, we'll sanitize your home, after we leave, so that, disinfect it, so that if you're worried about, the germs from the employee, it's long past now, but it was an opportunity area. We explored a few things during that period to make sure that we could keep growing. As it turned out, to be a great year. We only had a couple of down months, and then it turned around into record months after that. But
so that obviously lesson learned on the pandemic there, and people have been asking me that same question. And so we're looking at the 2023, 24, getting into that, and you're seeing, looming recession, maybe some more headwinds coming at us again. Yep. What are you guys doing to counteract that? And is that some of the focus you have as a franchisor helping?
Absolutely. Again, going with the theme, what do? You got to hit. Another friend of mine said, if you got a hill in front of you and you're driving the car, are you going to hit the brakes, or are you going to hit the accelerator pedal? So, we're
Dukes of Hazzard, baby.
That's right. So the things we're doing. First of all, we are upping our spend on marketing. Right now again, we're facing headwinds. We're working with our franchise owners to refocus. It's interesting because what happened was we came out of a period 21, the end of 20 all the way into 21 and the first quarter of last year was unprecedented growth. I mean, just in terms of the number of leads coming into the trades in general was just insane. It was great, awesome time to be in the trades, but at the same time, most of our tenured folks will say we got a little lazy, right? We didn't really have to work very hard to get those leads, right? So, some of the basic stuff that we know works, our networking, getting out there and doing those feet on the street things, the local marketing, some of that suffered. So we're just pushing the reset button. This spring, we're working with our owners to just say, hey, let's make sure we're putting our marketing plans in place. As a franchisor, we're going to double the spend that we're doing nationally to make sure that, we're helping to, our franchise owners grow the business. We're continuing to invest in that commercial side, especially. That's our largest growth area last year was in commercial, and we expect that that's going to continue into 23. I think, when we see the headwinds in front of us, I always believe that out of turbulence comes opportunity. I think that's the one thing I've always said, when the seas are calm, there's not as much opportunity. When there's headwind and there's turbulence, that's when there's really opportunity to have extraordinary growth in a business. But you got to be proactive in it.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because not to say that I was doing it, but I am doing the same thing. I had 3 estimators who didn't have to do any networking at all because we kept feeding them leads. And I'm like, boys, it's time to get out there. So every one of them is going to a BNI meeting next week to get in the weekly networking and do that. I'm doubling down on radio, going out and doing some TV spots. So yeah, I think that's what we've got to do in 23.
Yeah,
is hit that gas pedal, big boy.
I had one of my old mentors who said to me once, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And I had to think about it. I'm like, what the heck does that mean? I just moved to the South. But, like you said, it was really easy to do business. You didn't have to do anything. You're a hog. You're going to get slaughtered if you stay a hog. But if you're a pig and you're greedy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tara, I've enjoyed our time together. We're coming to the end, but I can't let you go without plugging a little bit. We've been talking about Fresh Coat Painters. How can everybody find out either one, if they want to buy into this franchise, or, hey, if I got a Fresh Coat Painter in my area, where do I go find them?
Okay. So obviously, searching Fresh Coat on the internet. So our website is, freshcoatpainters.com or freshcoatfranchising.com are the 2 websites. If you're interested in a franchise, definitely I would suggest go there, ask for some information. One of our recruiters will give you a call and talk you through that. We're not here to sell franchises, by the way. It's got to be a good fit, but if you want information, that's the best way to get it. And again, we've got over 170 locations out there. Definitely would love to have you let us give you a quote. And if you've got a painting project, and if you're on the commercial side and have big projects out there, we'll provide one-stop shopping for you. So I've got a whole team that, project managers, and in fact, I've got a vice president who does nothing but manages the commercial side of the business for us. So
nice.
So it sounds like a franchise that actually has a lot of support.
It sure does, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you heard about the ones who don't?
No.
We're actually got a good friend right now.
Michel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally getting scammed by the group he's with. So go out there and check them out. Fresh Coat Painters. Somebody who's doing it right, get involved in the community. Go check them out. But I can't let you go, Tara, without asking our final 3 questions. And as I heard on a different podcast, everybody waits for his final 5 questions.
He has 5.
He had 5, yeah, and he was rapid firing me too, bro. I mean, it's like whoop, 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 and I was ready. All right, but I'm gonna hit you with my 3. So, so first question I have, which I just forgot what I was going to ask, but what is your favorite feature of your home?
My favorite feature in my home is the hidden room.
Whoa,
it's like a panic room.
Yeah. Okay, so I bought this house 2 years ago. And I had to do a quick tour. I was late for my appointment, and I saw this trap door in the master closet, and I thought, oh, it's a floor safe. That's awesome, And anyway, I moved in, didn't think about it, and there was the previous owner had left a key on a bulletin board and said key to the trap door in the master bedroom. And anyway, I can't believe this. I didn't open it. And my dad came to visit, and he's like, "What is this?" I said, "Oh yeah, it's a floor safe." He said, "Well, did you open it?" And I'm like, "No." So, "Don't you think you should?" And I'm like, "Okay." Well, anyway, so imagine my surprise. I get the key, I open it, and I look, and there's a ladder going down and a dark space. And I should have noticed that the garage under my bedroom was, 10 feet shorter than the rest of the house, and that there was a extra room. I said, talk about a bonus room. I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do with it yet, but I have this room that, I can access through a ladder in the floor of my
retire
closet.
The question.
That one is probably the best answer I've ever heard. I've heard, outdoor living, my office.
I was waiting for you to say, I opened the trap door and there was a little light down there and I heard a record player playing or something. From Lost.
Well,
that's what I'm thinking.
It was creepy. I mean, it was pitch black, and I'm like, I had to get a flashlight.
Your dad was there.
Yeah, thank you, Dad. I'm glad my dad was there, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
You sent him down there first. Hey, Dad, go down there and check it out. Let me know what's
Yeah,
going
go
on.
check that out. You know,
Hey,
it's like,
you're older. I got more to live for. You can't say that. Did I say that on the
You
I
did,
did. All right.
yeah.
All right.
Sometimes you should. take
Number
words
two,
to-
you've been in the restaurant business. You've done a lot of stuff. You've obviously been customer facing. You've been out there. What is your biggest customer service pet peeve?
wow. Well, it depends on the space, but in restaurants, I will tell you my biggest customer service pet peeve is closing time. Like, when we owned a restaurant, we sat, if you have a hours of operation, you seat until that time and you close when you're done.
Yes.
But in the world of restaurants, I absolutely hate when people like, okay, they supposedly close at 8. Well, that means we can't seat you after 7:30 because we have to close at 8. I'm like, I don't think that's the way it should work. So that's one of my biggest customer service pet peeves outside of the trades.
There you go.
Yep.
Set an expectation and sit up to it. And how many times we literally showed up Cinco de Mayo, went to a Mexican restaurant, 7:30, and they closed at 8. And they said, sorry, we're not seating anymore. We're closing at 8. And we're like, but you're open.
Or if they
Right.
see you, the next thing you
what
know,
if
they got the Lysol out and they're putting chairs up on tables. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a great one.
Hey,
yeah,
thanks. This is great.
Solid answer. All right. Now here's one of my favorite ones.
She's 2 for 2.
All right, here we go. Let's see if she can do it. 3 for 3, and then we'll find out what she wins, Don Pardo. Oh, that's a long old story. I am old. All right. What is a DIY nightmare story?
Ooh, DIY nightmare story. Personal or somebody else's?
Oh, it's got to be yours because
Okay.
it's more fun when it's yours.
Yeah.
Oh,
And we like fire
And explosions.
and explosions.
fires and fire. Ooh, that's a good one. Wow. I learned at an early age that I didn't like doing things myself. But I think my biggest DIY nightmare story was when I was still in college. I thought I needed to be an auto mechanic. And I bought tools and I still have them, by the way. People are like, why do you have all these tools? I'm like, well, because I wanted to save $25, or probably back then $15 changing my oil. So I still have ramps. I've got one of those rolling toolboxes. So really I never managed to destroy my car doing this, so it would have really been a nightmare story. But if you really think about it, that's the nightmare. It's the nightmare of realizing, to really do things right, how many tools do you have to buy? How many,
You hit on one. I had you remember the black pan you'd put underneath the car that you ran the oil into?
Yeah.
I must have kept that sucker for like 10 years, never changing my oil ever again, because I said, well, I got to, because I grew up in the Midwest and I have to do the same thing. I've always got to change my oil, and I stopped doing it. And you started realizing that you can go get your oil change for, $20,
Right.
or you can go spend $65 and 3 trips and a Saturday morning drilling your own oil. So I love that one. That's a great one, because sometimes we attack things and we just got to say, whoa, stop. And I tell people that all the time.
Penny
You can put
wise,
yourself-
pound foolish. Is that where that came from?
Absolutely. That
Yeah.
is so. Or hey, you can take 5 trips to Home Depot to do your project, or you can call us and we'll just take care of it, and you can go off and go
Right.
golfing. So it's up to you. Tara, I've enjoyed our time together, and we have enjoyed our time learning a little bit more about what it takes to run a great franchise. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, and look forward to maybe getting the chance to meet you in person one day. So
Yeah, I'm
Maybe
looking
on the
forward to
golf
it.
course.
That's
maybe.
right. All right. I might know one. All right.
All right.
Small Business
Sounds good.
Safari. Be good. Keep going up that mountaintop. Make it happen. 2023 is your time to shine. Make it go. We're out of here.
Cheers.
Cheers.